Hey, loves. Thank you so much for joining me on another episode of Real Talk, where I get to have real life, raw conversations with incredible people from my circles and communities who overcome challenges and create amazing. Please, if you're watching and you enjoyed, share, like, and subscribe so we can continue to bring you incredible guest like my magical guest today. And also, thank you so much. I am so grateful to you listening, watching, replaying, because I know there are so many other places you can be. So, thank you so much for being here with us today. I am very grateful to you. Today, my incredible magical guest is Hanan Harb Sahourieh. Driven by a passion for storytelling and culture, Hanan is on a mission to elevate individuals and systems. With over 2 decades of writing, marketing, and learning and development roles, she brings a unique perspective to analyze the deeper meaning behind workplace dynamics. Hanan recognized a crucial gap in development programs and authored Everybody Be Cool, a groundbreaking book for employees and organizations. Her work has been featured in Art Voice, e-learning industry, training industry, and training magazines. As a ghostwriter and consultant, Hanan helps bring creative visions to life, advocates for employees, and guides organizations to drive positive change. Please help me welcome my guest today, Hanan Harb Sahourieh. Where are you at, Hanan? Come on.
Here I am,
Hi.
peekaboo.
Hi, Hanny.
Hi.
How are
Thanks for
you?
having me, girl. I'm good. How are you?
I'm so excited. I am so proud of you. I love the book. I finished it last night and it was awesome. It was
Oh, you're
awesome. It
so
spoke my
kind.
language. You spoke my language.
I love seeing your comments in there and what resonated with you, and I'm so honored to have your eyeballs on it.
Oh, honey, thank you. I was honored, to be able to sneak peek it. It's amazing and it's gonna be fabulous out there. I think everyone in corporate or even not in corporate in small businesses needs to read it because it covers so much. And like I said, I love your language. I love the language you use.
Thank you. Yeah.
what
I have a lot
what
of
motivated
feeling.
you
What is it?
what motivated you to write a book?
Great question. Well, what motivated me is I got laid off in the summer. And when you get laid off and you're a writer, it's like, all right, let's do this. Here's my big shot. And so I was trying to just be flexible and adaptable to the situation. And, there were different avenues I could go. I could start a newsletter, I could start a Substack, I could start, blogging more short form. But I had already started a series called Workplace Matters with my last employer. And I said, okay, why don't I just stitch together some of those blog posts?
Hmm.
And that kind of turned into, kind of a bigger can of worms. It was a starting point, but then I started researching and talking to different people in my world and getting their perspectives and different professionals and just getting inspired by people in my community and just tapping into observations and experiences that I've had. Looking back in my career, it was a very cathartic experience too. But then I said, okay, let me get a book out, and then I can use this as an opportunity to, ghostwrite other people's books and consult with organizations and just, get a lot of observations and feelings off my chest. So it was a lot of different motivators.
So would you say that the book was therapeutic to write?
So therapeutic. It's like, yeah, there's a lot going on in the workplace, and it gave me a chance to unpack and, talk to former managers and talk to old coworkers and just really tap into different people's experiences as well as, reflecting on my own, starting from, when I was a little baby fresh out of college and kind of just, unpacking everything that had happened and my journey. So, yeah, there was a lot of healing that went into that, and a lot of really good work, just thinking about my own career as well as, giving a voice to other professionals with other expertise. So there was a lot, that was packed into that 9 months. It was a long and complex journey, but it's been great.
I love it. I love it. It's typically the long and complex journeys typically just birth fabulous. And so, in that 9 month journey, what do you think was the most, challenging aspect of it? And what was the lesson that came out of that challenge?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think the most challenging aspect was, I really wanted things to happen quicker. I
Mm,
wanted to kind of churn it out. I was part of a masterminds, which was great in the beginning of being laid off, where I was with other ghostwriters who shared, tips and tricks. And the head of it had written a book about getting your book out fast. So I
mhm,
read his book and I'm like, okay, I'm going to follow his method and I'm going to do this in 6 weeks and it's going to be so easy. And, life had a different plan. So I think I wanted it to happen sooner than it did. I wanted to just be like, okay, every day I would sit down and it was like I was, at work, but just for myself and,
mhm.
setting deadlines for myself, but just feeling frustrated that it should,
That's
take
good. Oh,
it should take less time and yeah, just that as I quote one of the people in the book, Joel Jackson, who's also was my coach at one point and whose book I edited, Unlock Your Unconscious Leadership, or Unlock Your Conscious Leadership, sorry. And she talks about the inner gremlin. So it's
mm,
that voice in your head that's like, why
yep,
don't you? You need to.
right.
So that was the, giving myself space and Grace Redmond, to let the journey go where it needed to go, while also, holding myself accountable to these milestones and deadlines that I set for myself.
I totally feel you and hear you on the should. I feel you because I'm the type of person, like, I also want things to be done, fast and quickly. And I've learned that patience really is a virtue, and things will unfold in divine time the way
Mhm.
that they're meant to. Now, it sounds like, okay, you wanted it done in 6 months. However, it took 9 months. And when you look back now, can you see what the reason was that it needed that 9 months?
Yeah, I actually wanted it done in 6 weeks. I
Oh,
love
I
an
see.
unreasonable goal. Yeah, I do, because it's sometimes these things are like an onion, and especially if I'm going back and looking at my career and healing certain things. So, it's you peel it and it reveals itself to you. And then as I was having different conversations with people, doing research, different things were being revealed to me. And I also wanted to package that in a way that was palatable, that flowed, and really keep the reader front and center. So it wasn't just, my manifesto of like, this, that, and the other thing, but just that the reader leaves with things that they can do for their life that better their career and their life. That was really important to me, to have it be a learning experience for the reader, where I include my perspective and my point of view, but also give them tools and ways that they can take it and run with it and apply it to their own life in a way that makes sense for them.
No, I think you did an amazing job, because definitely, I definitely took some tools away. And I love stories, so I enjoyed the stories that you used. What I really loved, and I'm going to give a little bit away, are the movie example. Christopher, are the
Christopher.
Christopher are the movie examples you used. I loved it. I was laughing, and I totally could, see most of the examples you use. I won't give too many away. We're like, oh my God, I remember that. But I am going to share one. You did say, you were terrified even, just earlier entering the workforce. So I was also terrified entering, the workforce because I entered in, into sales. And then I remember watching Glenn Rossi so many times, and I have used that ABC. Always be
Always be
closing.
closing, yeah.
And I was like, oh my God. And but that's, watching those scenes, and I'm like, that's what it's like, and
Yeah.
so I loved all of those analogies you used because they were beautiful analogies, and I love the metaphors. Also what I loved was how you broke down the different generations of getting in the workforce from the early 1900s to today, and how you talked about the push and pull, in each generation. What would you say is the push and pull that we're experiencing now in this generation in the workforce?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of push and pull, and there's always push and pull. And I think that's why it's so important to have context to see what the patterns are and how it applies to our situation. So I would say, there's always a push and pull between the status quo and this is how we've always done things versus, well, let's try this new way.
Mhm.
And you can see that with return to office. You can see that with DE and I and the pushback and just the way things kind of swing. One year this is really in, the next year this is not in, and just I've always been fascinated with trying to figure out, like, what's happening? Like, what is the consensus? Like, this is good now, this is not good. So, yeah, I think, a lot of the younger generation or the different generations, that want to, make a change, they're the push and pull, which you'll find in any generation versus, doing things one way versus trying a new way, that's gonna always be there, but, yeah, I think right now a lot of that is still adjusting from COVID and having flexibility rather than, button seats, return to office, make the corporate real estate valuable and make it make sense to not have empty office space, which is understandable versus, no, I've been doing this for several years. I moved. Why do you need me in the office when I'm doing things that don't require me to be
Sure.
physically in the office? So, yeah, these type of things of the generations kind of butting heads at times where they don't necessarily see the value in each generation. But I think when we break it down, we could see that there's value
Mhm.
in each generation. It's just finding some kind of compromise.
Absolutely. And like you said, it's also perspective as well. Like you said
Mhm.
earlier, it's perspective on like, and the different push and pulls. And I understand what you're talking about. Like I see one of the push and pulls right now is, do we come back to the office? Do we stay hybrid? And I think we'll just see how that unfolds. I think a hybrid is great because I feel like it gives us more, work life balance. But then does it?
Mhm. Yeah, I mean, I anytime you can compromise, I think that's always good. And just 5 days working from home a week can feel like a lot. 5 days in the office can feel like a lot with commutes and everything. So I think if you can find that sweet spot, for you where you get a little bit of, okay, I have to put on work pants and leave the house and just get out of the house, that can be refreshing,
Yes.
um, and have the best of both worlds.
Yes. I always like that. The best of both worlds. This and that.
Yeah, why not? It's a
Totally. Why not?
win-win.
It's a win-win, exactly. So something you talked about in your book, and I just wanted you to speak on this. There is no escaping you in the workforce. What
Mhm.
does that mean?
Yeah, I think a lot of times, and what I've seen and what I've heard from other people, in the 20 years that I've been in the workforce, is a lot of it is about dealing with people, and dealing with, things that may not be healed. So you have a lot of unhealed people in bumping against each other. So, I mean, I think a lot of times people's skills sometimes take the back burner from, awareness, from just people being more present in who they are. So
Mm.
you sometimes people, especially in prior generations before there was this integration of no, be your exact self, a lot of times people separated that, like, here's my professional work self, here's my regular self. But you would also see, things bleed over. So
Yeah.
if you're having issues, if you're struggling with things that you're not addressing in your life, that's going to spill over in your workplace and on your colleagues.
Yes.
So that's why I think it's really important that, while culture is one thing, that everybody really checks in with themselves and asks themselves, am I showing up in the best way that I can? Am I taking time to work on myself so that when people engage with me, they're getting the best version of me, and they're not getting a me that is stressed out, not really listening, frustrated, not feeling heard. The more we can do the work on ourselves, like, it has a ripple effect that, will affect everybody on your team, everybody on your organization. So your lifelong professional development is really your personal development.
Amen to that. Amen to that. And something, how do you, because let's be just, realistic. A lot of people don't do the work on themselves, and then they project out all over the place, and you're dealing with, challenging personalities.
Mhm.
What is one way that, you can deal with a challenging personality, even though they think they're aware, but in reality they're not, and they're just projecting all over the place, and it makes it a difficult team to be on. What can we
Yeah,
do?
good question. I think, a lot of what we can do, it goes back to ourselves, how we're going to react to this trigger, which is the other person. And are we going to let it take us on this whole journey of anger, frustration, getting in that this is my enemy type of thing? Or are you going to find a way to, have some sort of resolution? And then that's tough because, you don't want to get walked all over. You don't want to feel like you're being mistreated in any way. So it's about finding that way that you feel okay, but you can figure out some sort of path forward that's respectful of yourself and the other person, but just doesn't get all that ickiness onto you. And it's tough. It's not easy. I think it's a big challenge in life, but that's why the more healed we are and the more we are able to work on ourselves, the more we can deal with the things that life just keeps throwing at you. Like, you don't get a
Yes.
second to breathe and be like, okay, on to the next thing. It's like, this is our instrument. This is our,
Yes.
our tool. We have to keep tuning our instrument.
And yes, we need to keep tuning our instruments. And some people's instruments are just completely out of tune sometimes.
Yeah,
And then we
exactly.
just got to look back at our instrument. Like, like,
Exactly. It was like, I'm just gonna play my violin and keep it
yeah,
moving.
whoa, whoa, here you go. I'll play you a violin. Like, um, Can you share a story with us about a challenging experience, that you faced working in corporate, how it affected you, how you handled it, and if you'd handle it different this time, or
Yeah.
for writing the book?
Mhm. Yeah, one of the stories that I mentioned in the book is the experience with, a manager who had an issue with my face.
I wanted to throw the computer across the room when I read that.
Yeah, it's wild. She just, felt that my eyes didn't match my smile, on calls, and it was something that she kept bringing up, and it got to the point where it was causing me a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress, and then I didn't wanna be on camera with her because, she was scrutinizing my face, and then she didn't understand that I didn't wanna be on camera with her, and it was it was not ideal, and it wasn't necessarily fixable in the moment because it was something that I went to other people. I tried to reach out to, see what I could do, checked in with myself, but it ended up I ended up leaving that organization, and then she ended up leaving shortly after, so she didn't work out there, but that was just another issue, and sometimes it's gonna be like that. Sometimes people just don't like your face or like they have an issue with your face, and I'm like, "Okay, well, what about my work?" But she kept going back to it, and she was like, "Other people agree, and you need to, like, come on camera. I need to see your face, but then I'm gonna scrutinize it." And then I think that just goes back
That
to
feels so that feels so, just, again, challenging to deal with.
it wasn't ideal, I think that just goes back to people sometimes a lot of times making things more complicated than they have to be, and not necessarily about work, and they make it more about interpersonal things because that's their own journey and that's their own unhealed stuff going on,
Our
and
own
they
stuff.
may be in a position that is higher than you. um, and it was unfortunate because, yeah, I wanted to have a good relationship with this person. They were new to the organization. They were coming in and trying to trailblaze, but yeah, that wasn't in the cards for us. But I
Yeah,
had to just, like, gather my face and get moving because
your beautiful face. Now, sometimes things like that are hard not to internalize. In that
yeah.
moment, did you internalize it? And if so,
Um,
through that.
yeah, probably. It was just probably, like, me not doing a good enough job or, um yeah, or just being stressed out about, like, my reactions and, like, wanting to perform better for her or something or have her, um, approve of me or, pat me on the head and tell me I was doing a good job, but, yeah, I mean, eventually I came to the place of I tried to see, is my face doing something weird? And I'm an expressive person, and I don't know I don't know what's going on, but it's just the feedback of I don't think you're being genuine, maybe is what she was trying to get across. But then that's just yeah, I probably did internalize it to answer your question to a certain, that's something that I work on is not taking things personally because I take
Yeah,
a lot of things, pretty
totally,
personally, but that's my push and pull is working on like, okay, that's their issue, that's there,
totally.
and I can just take the feedback that I can implement and try to have an open mind with it and try to move forward and I'm always open to constructive criticism, but when it's something like that, I'm like, I don't
Yeah,
think this is a me issue at this point.
totally. Well, that goes back to what you said there's no escaping you in the workforce. And there she is, like we talked about, like you said, people's just their stuff spilling all over the place. And that
Right.
was a beautiful example of someone spilling all over the place. And it had nothing to do with with you or your face, and then it goes back to, again, you know, looking within yourself, herself.
Right.
How would you
Right.
handle that situation differently now, knowing what you know?
I might, approach it with more curiosity, um, and less fear. I think I was definitely operating from fear, for a lot
Yeah,
of.
understandable.
Yeah, and I think, um, yeah, I think it's tough also too when there's like a power imbalance too, and you're trying to have these conversations. But yeah, I would just use all the tools available to me to
Mhm.
get me where I feel okay, dealing with somebody that's going to be triggering, and just stick up for myself, which I feel I did to a certain extent. And yeah, if it feels very bad and it's not tenable, you find another situation rather than just dealing with the place that doesn't accept you or your face.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately what I did. Sometimes it takes longer.
Bye, Felicia. Bye, Felicia.
Yeah, goodbye. And
Goodbye.
so yeah, sometimes you got to go where you're more appreciated, and it can be arbitrary sometimes, and depending on people's perceptions of you.
Exactly. And I love what you just said, like, go where you're appreciated, go where you're valued, sit at that table.
Mhm.
And it's not
Absolutely.
always, sometimes it's easier said than done. Like you said, you're in this position, and it's scary, to think about doing something different, or leaving somewhere that you've been for a very long time.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, that's why I talk about, keeping your personal brand handy, and having these like tools to empower yourself so that you have that ready to go, that you don't find yourself in a position where you have to kind of scramble and like get things, to a certain point where you can, start looking. So you want to always develop that. And no matter what organization you're at, your personal brand is your personal brand, and it shifts depending on where you are, but it's you own that and you direct your career.
Mhm. I love, love, love that. And I love that chapter, in the book about your personal brand, because you talk about your personal brand is your reputation. Your
Mhm.
personal brand is who you show up as, every day. And something else you talk about is be aware of your surroundings in the workplace. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I think it's important to know where you are in any given moment in any landscape, whether
Mhm.
it's globally, whether it's in the workplace. It's like, where am I at this point in time? What happened before me? What's coming? So you always want to orient yourself, because otherwise it's like starting a movie in the middle. So I think it's really important, and it's not something that's talked about enough. And that's why I had these like funny like media references
I loved
for
it.
that was the extent of my like real world working knowledge. I'm like, okay, there's Office Space, there's The Office, there's 9 to 5, from the 80s.
Yeah.
And this was, as an English major, who had interned at some newspapers while in college, I didn't really have much exposure to the workplace. And I mentioned, my dad was a Mr. Softy, which is a ice cream truck salesperson in the East Coast. My uncle Farid, who's like a dad to me, he worked at a place called Bethlehem Steel, which was really big in, the early 1900s in Buffalo. And that's why they call it the Rust Belt. There was a lot of production there of like things like bridges and things that built the country, in the early days, and went out of business in, I think the 70s or so. And just hearing from him, his work ethic and how he got ahead, it was a different landscape. It wasn't the corporate environment, but he was saying, I would sweep, and I would just like sweep harder and faster than anybody, and then I'd get a raise, and then I
Mm,
would given this task and I'd work harder and faster than anybody. They told me slow down, but I just kept going because he was motivated and he that was his ticket to the American dream. So kind of taking these bits and pieces together of, context and knowledge. But like if you have more of a understanding of like, okay, this is why this setting is the way that it is, it kind of
Mhm.
helps you understand, you know,
Definitely.
commonly accepted beliefs and ways of being that make more sense rather than kind of just being dropped in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, no, I love that. I love because again, like you said, it's about the awareness and just understanding the environment. Who is it like about who does what the personalities are, how things move, the
Yeah.
culture.
What are the rules? I was always, I think, trying to understand what are the rules,
Mm,
and I especially entered it like, don't do the wrong thing, don't get in trouble. And so, and now I'm understanding that, yeah, there's like basic rules, but there's not like, it wasn't like somebody got this training that I wasn't privy to. Everybody's kind of making their own rules as they go, and some people feel more empowered than others.
mm,
And when you understand and you have more knowledge of the context, when you have more experience, when you have a mentor who's been there, who can take you under
mhm,
their wing and say, this is how it's done, this is how I did it, that gives you more understanding. But when you figure it out for
mm,
yourself,
mhm,
there's more of a, okay, it takes you a while to get in the rhythm and to feel empowered to
mhm.
make your own mark and not, operate from fear.
Sure. Well, that's a big one. Most of the time, we're operating from fear and how to move, and all those fears serve a purpose too.
Mhm.
And you mentioned that as well, but how to move out of that fear into you know feeling more confident.
Right.
What advice, something that came up also in the book was, having a voice. What advice would you give to someone who's, just starting in the workforce and, really there's something that they need to address and they're just, kind of being avoidant. You talked about that.
Mhm.
What's some advice that you could give to allow them to feel more comfortable to have a voice?
I would say, definitely just working on their personal brand, outside of their organization, with platforms like LinkedIn. They are empowered to share about their expertise, to share their day in the life, to um, you know, get those thoughts out, and it may not always you may not always have an avenue to do it in your role, especially if it's more of a systemic or organizational issue, or it's out of your job role. But if you keep working on your personal brand, keep posting on LinkedIn, have a strategy around that, have your elevator pitch, you're able to have your voice be heard, and kind of say, okay, you can point to it in things like uh your performance review, and say, this is it all adds to your voice, and it's the more that you have that brand, the stronger it can be. And I would also go back to, if you can get a mentor or a sponsor or somebody with experience to advocate for you, to
Mhm.
speak about you when you're not in the room, that's huge.
Yes.
So making those connections with people in the organization, um, even at your own level, just having good treat people the way that you want to be treated. And if something comes out of that, great. And people advocate for you, and just keep using your voice, and hopefully that will help your voice internally in whatever organization that you're in.
I love that because what you're saying is be your own cheerleader. Like,
Hmm.
post about your days, get on LinkedIn, work on your brand, build your confidence there. Because what I'm hearing you say, if you're building your confidence on your own, on your brand, then once you're in, in the workplace or in the office and something comes up, you're going to feel more confident to address it. Ooh,
Exactly.
I like that.
Exactly. Yeah. One of the people that I spoke with and a connection on LinkedIn who speaks about personal brand, she's quoted as saying, once you develop your personal brand, like organizations can't mess with you,
Oh,
basically. So,
that's
yeah,
true.
not that we're assuming negative intent, but things happen sometimes, and sometimes it can get a little wonky.
Yeah,
But the more you're able to point to this, platform and say, look, I've been saying this, I've been consistent, I have thought leadership in this area. It kind of it's social proof of what
yeah.
you can do.
Social proof. Social proof is huge,
Hmm.
huge. So being your own, advocate to start as well,
Absolutely. Yeah, if you're not excited about you, it's
right?
hard to get others about you. So you have to a lot of us have that or have had an assumption of just put your head down and work. And that's not always something that's recognized.
Right,
Uh, you have to be like, this is what I did, like
right.
this,
You're so
this,
right. Yeah.
this is what I can do. And you have to, people might see that as bragging or being cringe.
Mm,
But you have to embrace the cringe and
you do. You just hit it something on the nose.
mhm,
You have to celebrate your accomplishments and share them and talk about them. And I think in society we have a negative connotation to that, and that would be, okay, this person is full of themselves.
right.
However, like you just said, if you're head down, no one's going to know what you're doing. That's that's beautiful.
Absolutely.
That's not
Thank
easy
you.
to do. That's not easy
No,
to do.
it's
And
not.
I love in the book at the end, like you give so much advice about how to create your brand on LinkedIn. So I thought that was brilliant. So those of you that are watching, definitely I would highly recommend. I mean, I love the book. There's so many great pieces to it, and that chapter on building your brand on LinkedIn was excellent. I love
Great.
how you brought in, the practical pieces and the spiritual pieces, which I love. So I really appreciated that about the book. And you talked about vulnerability, and I
Mhm.
really, I loved what you said, because there's this move toward, okay, be vulnerable, be vulnerable. However, when you are vulnerable in a work situation, it can be used against you.
Yeah, it's
And
it's not
so,
for everybody.
no, and I mean, is there a way? And also, I guess what's coming up in my mind, vulnerable and authentic, is that even the same?
In a way, I feel like vulnerable is, putting yourself out there, and authentic is more being who you are. But I think both of them have like double and triple asterisks next to them. And I talk about how people got super excited, especially leadership, about folks like Brene Brown and her TED Talk and everyone's this, and then that shifted to be the new trend. That's why I think it's important to know that these trends come and go. But
Yeah.
if you're in it, especially if you're a literal person like I am, you're like, okay, this is the thing. This is a safe space because the person said the word safe space. So that magically makes it so. And I'm like, ready. You're like, yeah, let's like share our feelings. But I had to realize that that's not really for everybody. It may be for the person who's leading the situation. It's actually a privileged position to be able to be authentic. Well,
Mhm.
not just authentic, to be vulnerable. If you're maybe an individual contributor and you want to open up and be vulnerable, it depends. It really all depends. So I would say proceed with caution. Just because people say open up and it's okay, you know, it's really a case by case situation, and I would take that um everybody's going to interpret those words and those concepts differently. So while people may want to strive to get to a point where things are safe, where there isn't any judgment, you're working with human beings.
Totally. Totally. You're working with human beings, and just be discerning, and also intuition. Use
Mhm.
your intuition, and if it doesn't feel right, um, because I've been in situations in the past where it was like, oh, this is a safe space, just come on in, and then you feel all warm and fuzzy, and then you're like, oh my gosh, wait a second, that was a manipulative, move.
Manipulative,
That was
absolutely.
a gaslighting, manipulative move, and you learn.
Right.
You
Right, you
learn.
learn,
So,
but you learn by being in a situation where you're like, "Oh, that didn't feel right,"
right,
and then you
right.
have, like, a vulnerability hangover, and you're like, "Why did I say that?" And, I wish I didn't share that, but yeah, you
You
learn
know what? We do. And then I always say, lately, I'm like, merrily, 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 merrily. Life is but a dream.
I
And
guess.
so we learn from all of those. But I still don't like those yucky moments. But then I go back, I'm like, okay, well, that taught me something. I won't do
Yeah,
that. Or this is how I would do it different. So being discerning, and, with all the talk about vulnerability and DEI, sometimes I feel like it just depends on who. It may not be for everyone. You understand what I'm saying?
absolutely. It depends on the very human people who are leveraging these concepts.
Right.
And if you're trusting, if you're more like, okay, yeah, let's do this, your interpretation of that may be completely different based on your lived experience.
Exactly. Exactly. And people are human.
People are human and they're
They're
gonna human
unhealed.
all over you.
Right. They're human, and they're unhealed. And then that's where, all of but that's why I love about what you talk about. And I'm going to share this. Um, I love your spiritual business moments. So I'm going to share. Remember that we are all part of a greater whole and affect each other. Man, I'm getting emotional, Hanny.
Oh, baby.
We are all one. We are waves in the same ocean. We can be the change we want to see by uplifting ourselves. When you hurt others, you hurt yourself. No matter how much you've othered someone as your enemy, while we can't always control the conflict surrounding us, we can level up our own energy and vibration.
Yeah.
I love that. And the other thing, I loved what you said. We cannot carpet bomb our way through life and expect a happy ending.
Right. Yeah. I,
Beautiful,
thank
beautiful work, sister.
thank
Beautiful.
you. Thank you. Yeah. I believe, that I believe these things in my soul, and call me a corporate hippie, but
No.
um I believe that there's a way that, we can do business and be good to each other and make a living, and like, why not choose kindness? Why not choose love? Why not choose oneness? I know we can't
Yeah.
all, you know, be kumbaya all the time, but if like we each have the choice of the energy that we're going to bring in any space we
Yes.
inhabit. So,
Yes.
if we feel helpless about, things going on in the world, and this is where, and I quote Eddie Khawaja in there, who I realized that we are all one, we are all waves in the same ocean. I realized I was like, oh, this is Eddie, who is
I love
kind of,
Eddie, and I love because it's true. It's
yeah,
true.
it's true. We're not separate. It's an
No,
illusion, and I
it's an
think,
illusion.
yeah, the way we treat others is a reflection of how we feel about ourselves. So
100%.
like that's why the workplace has kind of dabbled in these spiritual moments, and it's like let's go all in. Like if we really want to go there, let's go there and just you know be good to each other and be
Right.
kind, and don't try to that's why I talk about, the past and like people like Ayn Rand from the 50s and this dog eat dog kind of mentality in the workplace that we've inherited. And so there's a lot of like shedding of
Yes.
um, unhealthy and just kind of I win, you lose
Right.
kind of mentalities. And it's like, no, why don't we all
Right.
win? Like, I know that there's a way we can do that.
Absolutely. And I'm with you on that. We can all be winners. We run our own race, and with kindness and love and respect, we lift each other up. I believe in the oneness. And again, I'm going to read this again. What you wrote, in this spiritual business moment. When you hurt others, you hurt yourself, no matter how much you've othered someone as your enemy.
Right.
And it takes a stronger person to go within themselves and say, where am I the problem in this? Taking accountability for their part, like that
Absolutely.
lady, from your book. I'm like, really? Turn it around, lady. Look in the mirror.
Right. Like what's going on within you that's
Right, right,
triggered. Yeah.
right, right. So good. I could stay here with you for another hour and talk about all this. And we brought it full circle, and you talking about again, be kind, treat
Mhm.
others the way you want to be treated. We
Mhm.
are, waves of the same ocean. Yes, we have to go into the office space and, do this work. How can we do it better?
Right.
By being better.
Right. Right. Yeah. We may not realize the power that we have.
Right.
You think, oh, I'm just in this system, but I have no ability to change it. But through these changes, like it sparks a change that
Yeah,
can affect the system itself.
absolutely. And it takes time. It
Hmm.
takes time. I would imagine that to change a culture, within any organization, it's going to take time, and it has to start with someone. And that someone's not going to be the popular person. I'll tell you that,
No.
because you're going to get pushed back and you're going to be like, oh my God, that's so weird. Like, what you know, that's not the dog eat dog mentality. That's like, you're not going to win doing that.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
what is
It's
one piece of advice that you would like to leave us with today? Final piece of advice, some nugget.
use the tools available to you. If you have communications training available to you, take it. If you have resources that give you coaching benefits, take it. If you can go to therapy and it's through your health insurance or it's affordable, or you can afford it, do it. Do things that are going to improve your life, and you'll see that it will positively affect everything in your life. So just don't be afraid to try something different, weird, uncomfortable. This will only add value to your life.
That was, I need to quote all that you just said. Boom. I love it. That's
Thank
on
you.
point. Start with yourself. That was so fun. Thank you so much for joining
You're
me
so
today.
fun.
Oh my gosh. And your book, Everybody Be Cool. Everybody be cool.
Make
So,
cool place.
tell us, I know
Please.
you're also doing some, ghostwriting, consulting. You're amazing. I know you've done some work for me. So please let our audience know where they can find you, and also once your book we'll have the link in the comments for your book as well, so let us know where we can find you.
Yes, I am on LinkedIn. Find me there, Hanan Harb Sahourieh. I am happy to, bring your book idea to life. I'm passionate about, helping people write their book. I work with organizations to tailor a professional personal development program for their employees to help them elevate their workplace vibe and keep the culture as amazing as it can be. So I'm happy to speak with you about any of those services.
Awesome. I love it. And we will put all of your information in the comments. However, if anyone has, if you're listening, replaying, watching live, if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to put them in. I'm sure Hanan or I will get to them, and I will help lead you in the right direction towards Hanan. Thank you so much. And as always, thank you so much for watching, listening, being here on the replay. As always, I am so grateful and thankful. And like, share, and subscribe so we can keep showing up with incredible people like Hanny. All right, all. Have an amazing day ahead. Love you guys. Hang on with me, Hanny.